Okay, now I might piss a few people off here, but I really don't care because these things need to be said and they need to be out there. It's really aimed at politicians, military officials, entrepreneurs and experts from all around the world. Hear me out, okay? This is what I really think of the international security problems facing us. Now, it is well known that international security compromises much more than issues relating to military and political stability. It involves the stability of the global economy, overcoming poverty, economic security and developing a dialogue between civilizations. This universal, indivisible character of security is expressed as the basic principle that security for one is for all. As Franklin D. Roosevelt said during the first few days that the Second World War was breaking out, when peace has broken anywhere, the peace of all countries is in danger. Now, these words remain topical today. Incidentally, we are in a global crisis which requires global responsibility, and this amplifies this. Only 2 decades ago, the world was ideologically and economically divided, and it was the huge strategic potential of 2 superpowers that ensured global security. This global standoff pushed the sharpest economic and social problems to the margins of the international communities and the world's agenda. And just like any war, the Cold War left us with live ammunition, figuratively speaking. I refer to ideological stereotypes, double standards and other typical aspects of the Cold War bloc thinking, the bloc thinking of that. The unipolar world that had been proposed after the Cold War did not take place either. The history of humanity certainly has gone through unipolar periods and seen aspirations to world supremacy. However, what is a unipolar world? Well, one might embellish this term. At the end of the day, it refers to one type of situation, namely one centre of authority, one centre of force, one centre of decision making. It is a world in which there is one master, one sovereign, and well, this is just pernicious, not only for all those within this system, but also for the sovereign itself, because it destroys itself from within. And this certainly has nothing in common with democracy, because as you know, democracy is the power of the majority in the light of the interests and opinions of the minority. I consider that the unipolar model is not only unacceptable, but also impossible in today's world. And this is not only because if there were individual leadership in today's, and precisely in today's world, then the military, political and economic resources would not suffice. Now, what is even more important is that the model itself is flawed, because as its basis there is and can be no moral foundations for modern civilization. Along with this is what is happening in today's world is a tentative to introduce precisely this concept into international affairs, the concept of a unipolar world, and with which results though? Unilateral and frequently illegitimate actions have not resolved any problems. Furthermore, they have caused new human tragedies and created new centres of tension. Judge for yourselves. I mean, wars as well as local and regional conflicts have not diminished, and no less people perish in these conflicts. Even more people are dying than before, significantly more. Today we are witnessing an almost uncontained hyper use of force, military force, in international relations. Force that is plunging the world into an abyss of permanent conflicts. As a result, we do not have sufficient strength to find a comprehensive solution to any one of these conflicts. Finding a political statement also becomes impossible. We are seeing a greater disdain for the basic principles of international law, and independent legal norms are, as a matter of fact, coming increasingly closer to one state's legal system. One state, and of course First and foremost, the United States has overstepped its national borders in every way. This is visible in the economic, political, cultural and educational policies it imposes on other nations. Well, who likes this? Who is happy about this? In international relations, we increasingly see the desire to resolve a given question according to so-called issues of political expediency based on the current climate, and of course this is extremely dangerous. It results in the fact that no one feels safe, because no one can feel that international law is like a stone wall that will protect them. Of course, such a policy stimulates an arms race. The force's dominance inevitably encourages a number of countries to acquire weapons of mass destruction, and moreover, significantly new threats, though they were also well known, have appeared, and today threats such as terrorism have taken on a global character. Well, I for one am convinced that we have reached that decisive moment when we must seriously think about the architecture of global security, and we must proceed by searching for a reasonable balance between the interests of all participants in the international dialogue, especially since the international landscape is so varied and changes so quickly. Changes in the light of development in a whole number of countries and regions. The combined GDP, measured in purchasing power parity of countries such as India and China, is already greater than that of the United States, and a similar calculation with the GDP of the BRIC countries, Brazil, Russia, India and China, surpasses the cumulative GDP of the EU, and according to the experts, this gap will only increase in the future. There is no reason to doubt the economic potential of the new centres of global economic growth will inevitably be converted into political influence and will strengthen the multipolarity. In connection with this, role of multilateral diplomacy is significantly increasing. The need for principles such as openness, transparency and predictability in politics is uncontested, and the use of force should be really exceptional measure. It should be a really exceptional measure, because comparable to using death penalties in the judicial systems of certain states. However, today we are witnessing the opposite tendency, namely a situation in which countries that forbid the death penalty, even for murderers and other dangerous criminals, are airily participating in military operations that are difficult to consider legitimate. And as a matter of fact, these conflicts are killing people, hundreds and thousands of civilians. But at the same time, the question arises again of whether we should be indifferent and aloof to various internal conflicts inside countries, to authoritarian regimes, to tyrants, and to the proliferation of weapons of mass destruction. So there we have it, folks. I urge your questions and your comments to this video. I hope that you've been listening carefully, because this is the world in which we know and now live in. We need to move forward to make sure a better life for our young awaits. Thanks for your time, folks, and remember,
we are many.